paraphrase a certain Mr. F. Gump, sequels are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. For every Empire Strikes Back, there is a speed cruise control. For every Godfather Part 2, there's a Godfather Part 3. Hey, even the book Forrest Gump was based on had a subpar follow-up. Is nothing sacred? The same goes for wrestling, and nowhere is that more apparent than in the history of WrestleMania. The granddaddy of them all has seen several do-overs, some of which are legendary, others utterly repulsive. Let's find out which is which, shall we? For this list, a rematch is counted as any match where all the participants are exactly the same as in a previous encounter. For example, John Cena and The Miz facing off in a mixed tag match at WrestleMania 33 does not count as a rematch from their Mania 27 main event. Thank God for that. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is every WrestleMania rematch ranked from worst to best. Join us. Number 19, Shane McMahon vs. The Miz at WrestleMania 39. There is a massive asterisk next to this one, but we couldn't leave it off the list because it was so bloody funny. On the second night of WrestleMania 39, The Miz was complaining to co-host Snoop Dogg about the rapper springing a surprise opponent on him, Pat McAfee, the night before. Instead of apologizing, Snoop played the same trick again, announcing that The Miz had yet another impromptu match in the offing. So who was his opponent this time? That's right, Sweatius Maximus himself, Shane McMahon. These two had previously tussled at WrestleMania 35 in a surprisingly decent Falls Count Anywhere match featuring the greatest run-in ever from Miz's dad. This time, however, things would not run so smoothly. During what should have been a relatively simple sequence, Shane legitimately tore his quads, which led to an on-the-fly decision to have Snoop take his place. After hitting the worst people's elbow ever, the DOGG got the win. This should technically make the match Snoop Dogg vs. The Miz, invalidating it for this list, but as I said earlier, this was simply hilarious, and I will take any opportunity I can to relive it. Let's start for real, shall we? Number 18, Randy Orton vs. Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 37. At Elimination Chamber 2017, Bray Wyatt bested 5 other men to win his first WWE Championship, setting the stage for a big WrestleMania clash against his then-follower, Randy Orton. The Viper had spent months infiltrating the Wyatt family before turning on the cult leader by burning down his shed. Okay, bit odd, but the match should be good. Well, as long as nobody brings a projector to the stadium and starts flashing images of bugs onto the... Oh wait, that's exactly what happened. 4 years after this wet fart of a title match, Orton and Wyatt had the chance to do better at WrestleMania 37. With Wyatt now in his Fiend era, this was the perfect opportunity for him to get revenge on the Apex Predator and avenge his loss. Should be fine, as long as he doesn't pop out of a giant box-like structure and then lose because Alexa Bliss... Oh goddammit, not again. Both Orton and Wyatt matches were utter disasters, leaning way too heavily into the spooky side of Bray's character, which distracted from the actual wrestling on display. Sadly, this would be Wyatt's final appearance at the Show of Shows, an ignoble way to go out. Number 17, Sheamus vs. Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 28. We toyed over whether or not to include this one, as the first Mania singles meeting between Sheamus and Daniel Bryan actually happened on number 27's pre-show. This lumberjack match was for the United States Championship, but ended in a schmoz when all the men around the ring started on each other. This then led to a spontaneous battle royal, which had no prize and was won by the Great Khali. Time well spent, eh? The following year, the Celtic Warrior and the American Dragon were promoted to the opening match of the main card, which this time was for Bryan's World Heavyweight Championship. Unfortunately, this is that match. You know, the one that ended after 18 seconds when Sheamus hit Bryan with a bro kick after he kissed AJ Lee at ringside. Fans were livid, in part, that WWE hadn't let these two talented grapplers put on an actual match. They were proven right the following month when the two had a stellar rematch at Extreme Rules. At the very least, this moment sparked fan support for Bryan, which in turn led to his triumphant Mania 30 win 2 years later. At the time, though, it was a load of bollocks. Number 16, Brock Lesnar vs. Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 34. Whilst you could say that the main event of WrestleMania 31 was technically a triple threat featuring Seth Rollins, the advertised match, and the one that happened for most of the allotted time, was WWE Champion Brock Lesnar against Royal Rumble winner Roman Reigns. Just saying those words makes my skin crawl. Despite Reigns being as popular as a hand grenade in a submarine at the time, the match itself was pretty decent. 3 years later, WWE ran it back for Brock's Universal Championship, only this time there was no money in the bank to save the day. At WrestleMania 34, Reigns and Lesnar had a bafflingly bad match to close out the show, which saw both men repeatedly spam their finishers over and over again, until the champ finally put the challenger down to end the bout on a severe anticlimax. Fans didn't want Roman to win, but they were also more than ready to see Lesnar drop the belt. Knowing that Lesnar would continue to hold the belt hostage sent them into a rage as the night's finale was met with a chorus of boos. Hey, maybe these two will do better next time. Number 15, Brock Lesnar vs Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 38. Well, they did better, just not by much. 4 years on from the Superdome fiasco, Reigns and Lesnar were in very different places heading into Mania 38. Brock was even more of a part-timer than before, and had also grown a lovely little beard and ponytail that would have been roundly mocked were we not all terrified he would eat us if he heard us laughing. As for Roman, he was now the Tribal Chief, an all-conquering baddie in the midst of a record-setting Universal Championship reign. This would have been a recipe for a mouth-watering main event, had fans not already seen these two fight about a bajillion times already. It also didn't help that WWE got to this point in the most convoluted way possible, moving the WWE title off and back onto Lesnar with reckless abandon. Then it was announced that the match would be for both belts, and everyone groaned even louder. When time came to ring the bell, nobody was excited for Lesnar versus Reigns, and the match itself lived down to those low expectations. Neither man did anything particularly original, and when Reigns pinned Brock to unite the championships, everybody was just glad it was over. Number 14, Triple H versus Batista at WrestleMania 35. At 7.5 hours long, including the pre-show, WrestleMania 35 remains the longest single-night pay-per-view WWE have ever produced. You know what could have been cut to save time? A 25-minute snooze fest between two old men fighting over an even older man. Batista had instigated his Mania 35 match with Triple H by kidnapping and brutalizing Ric Flair, Hunter's long-term friend and mentor. This led to that hilarious "Give me what I want" segment from Raw, which was honestly the best thing about this entire story. 14 years earlier, these two had fought in the main event of WrestleMania 21, where the Animal beat the Game to win the World Heavyweight Championship and cement himself as a new top star. This time, things were very different, as the two plodded their way through an extremely slow no-holds-barred match that had absolutely no right being the longest bout on the card. Triple H pulled out Batista's nose ring with some pliers, but can you really remember anything else that happened here? Oh, except Dave stacking it during his entrance. Didn't think so. Oh, and Tripp's got his win back if you're really interested. Number 13, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 4. The first honest-to-goodness WrestleMania rematch took place at the 4th ever event and was a rerun of what is perhaps still the quintessential match in the show's history. 1 year on from their epic main event encounter, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant were paired together in the one-night World Championship tournament at WrestleMania 4. Two of the biggest stars in WWE history going at it once again, now with even more history between them. This had the potential to be epic, so of course it ended in a double DQ after about 5 minutes. God damn it. After both men struck each other with chairs, Hogan did it first by the way, so technically Andre should have won, they were both removed from the tournament, which ended up giving the $1 Million Man a bye straight into the final. Whilst the match itself was a load of garbage, this one gets a pass because it was integral to the marketing of the show and ended up playing a key part in the night-long story. Just don't get your hopes up if you're expecting to see the same level of drama that there was at Mania 3. Number 12, The Rock vs John Cena at WrestleMania 29. You know that Talking Heads song, Once in a Lifetime? Well, Vince McMahon sure didn't, because he clearly didn't understand the phrase when he booked The Rock and John Cena to fight again at WrestleMania 29. I'm angry because the previous year, WWE had put on the exact same match with that very misleading tagline. This main event of WrestleMania 28 had been set in stone 1 year earlier and was marketed as a clash between two generational talents. The Mania 28 match wasn't half bad, but a lot of us weren't that bothered about seeing it again. Sadly, The Rock was WWE Champion and Cena had just won the Royal Rumble, so tough luck everybody. Again, this battle was just fine. It was nothing special and somehow felt no different to the previous one, despite there being a whole year's worth of history to draw on. Cena got his win back after taking an L the year before, leaving with the championship and Mr. Johnson's respect. At least we'd never have to hear another Fruity Pebbles line. Number 11, The Undertaker vs. Kane at WrestleMania 20. In terms of actual in-ring action, this clash from Mania 20 should probably be further down the line. But this match wasn't really a match, it was more of a spectacle. At Survivor Series 2003, The Undertaker, wrestling in his American Badass guise, lost a buried alive match to Mr. McMahon after an intervention from his demonic half-brother Kane. The Big Red Machine claimed to have finally killed Taker, but a series of ghostly incidents quickly cast doubt on this. To prove once and for all that his brother was dead, Kane challenged Undertaker to show up at Mania and face him in a match, which is exactly what happened. With torch-wielding druids and even Paul Bearer back at his side, Undertaker returned under his dead man guise for the first time in over 4 years as a bewildered Kane watched on in horror. The Phenom then proceeded to crush his satanic sibling in less than 8 minutes. Their Mania match 6 years earlier, when Kane still had his mask and was less than a year into his run, was definitely better between the bells, but in terms of pure wrestling theatre, it doesn't get much better than this. Number 10, Bret Hart vs. Yokozuna at WrestleMania 10. WrestleMania 10 famously hosted 2 World Championship matches, as the '94 Royal Rumble had been won by both Bret Hart and Lex Luger. Luger came up short against champion Yokozuna, which left only one man capable of stopping the gigantic sumo wrestler from leaving Mania with the belt, a man who knew exactly what it was like to go toe-to-toe with the behemoth. 1 year earlier at WrestleMania 9, Hart was the champion, defending against Rumble winner Yoko. With a big assist from Mr. Fuji and his salt pots, the not really Japanese star beats the Hitman, which then led to the whole Hulk Hogan thing, which we really don't have time to get into right now. Not only was Bret looking to shake off the previous year's loss, but also his defeat earlier in the night to younger brother Owen. Even with these crushing odds, Hart did it, ending the night as champion on the shoulders of the babyface locker room. The match wasn't spectacular or anything, hardly a classic, but at least it ended Mania on a high, and at least it was better than the nonsense from the year before. Number 9, Brock Lesnar vs. Goldberg at WrestleMania 33. If you had told a wrestling fan in 2004 that in 13 years' time, Brock Lesnar and Goldberg were going to have a WrestleMania rematch that would be one of the best bouts on the card, they would have laughed you all the way out of Madison Square Garden. What could have been a true clash of the titans at Mania 20 turned into the slog to end all slogs, as both men sabotaged their own match off the back of negative fan reaction to them leaving the company. Not even special guest ref Stone Cold could save it, and that is saying something. Nearly a decade and a half later, after renewing their rivalry at the 2016 Survivor Series, Lesnar and Goldberg were booked in a Universal Championship match at WrestleMania 33, and it was fantastic! With less than 5 minutes of match time, these raging bulls played to their strengths, which basically boiled down to hitting all their big moves one after another and crashing each other through barricades. Brock got the win in the belts, but both competitors had finally lifted the shadow of Mania 20 in this blistering, non-stop thrill ride of a wrestling match. I need to lie down just thinking about it. Number 8, Rhea Ripley vs. Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 39. In 2020, Rhea Ripley was red hot as the NXT Women's Champion and was being pegged as one of the stars of the future. Unfortunately, she hit a bump in the road though, a bump that looked suspiciously like the daughter of a 16-time world champion. After winning the Royal Rumble, Charlotte Flair decided to challenge for Ripley's title at Mania 36, and she won. This loss sent the Aussie on a downward spiral, affecting her confidence both in kayfabe and behind the scenes. Fast forward 3 years, Mammy had a shot at vengeance. This time, Ripley was heading into Mania as the Rumble winner, while Charlotte was the defending SmackDown Women's Champ. Although Although the build to this match had been trash, both women showed why they were two of the best performers on the roster, putting on a stunning bout that might have main evented any other show. After a stonking fight, Ripley struck with a top rope riptide to pin Charlotte and claim her rightful place at the top of the mountain. Number 7, Stone Cold Steve Austin vs. The Rock at WrestleMania 19. Lord of the Rings, the original Star Wars movies, How to Train Your Dragon. These are some of the greatest trilogies in film history, just as this match was the final installment in one of the greatest wrestling trilogies of all time. First meeting in the main event of WrestleMania 15, Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock battled once more over the WWE Championship. We will get to it later, don't worry, before going at it one more time in a bitter grudge match at Mania 19. The Rock, who was fully in his Hollywood douchebag phase at this point, couldn't get over how he had never beaten Austin at WrestleMania. This was all the story needed to be great, as the pair's long history added all the necessary context. Even though the Texas Rattlesnake was being held together by chewing gum and prayers at this point, he put in a stellar performance against his greatest foe, but it wasn't enough. Rocky got the pin, finally winning the big one against Austin in what would be the Texans' final wrestling match for 19 years. If that isn't what sports entertainment is all about, then I don't know what is. Number 6, Bray Wyatt vs. John Cena at WrestleMania 36. Out of all the mad stuff we've seen on this list so far, this was the hardest match of all to place, principally because it's not even really a match. When it was announced that Bray Wyatt would be taking on John Cena at WrestleMania 36, fans assumed that this would be the Eater of Worlds getting his win back from Mania 30, where a loss to Cena seriously derailed his momentum. Instead, possibly due to the fact that Mania 6 was held behind closed doors, we got this avant-garde video essay instead. The Firefly Funhouse match was the pinnacle of pandemic wrestling, a pre-taped cinematic journey through all the worst parts of Cena's career. The burials, the politics, the fan rejection, it was all there as Bray picked his opponent apart piece by piece in the most creative way possible. Some might argue that this shouldn't be this high or even on the list at all, but the Funhouse match was unlike anything wrestling had ever seen before and has seen since. It is a true work of art and a reminder that when the wrestling world lost Wyndham Rotunda, it lost one of its brightest minds. Number 5, The Undertaker vs. Triple H at WrestleMania 28. Alongside Rock Austin and Roman Brock, the other trilogy of singles matches to take place at WrestleMania was between a zombie cowboy biker and the bloke from The Chaperone. It's much better than I've just made it sound. The third and final Mania encounter between Triple H and The Undertaker went down at WrestleMania 28, and WWE did everything they could to make it as grand as possible. Not only was Shawn Michaels, a man with deep connections to both participants, serving as the special guest referee, but this war would take place inside Hell in a Cell. Sign me the heck up. Though it may have overstayed its welcome a little at half an hour long, this gladiatorial clash lived up to the hype. Drawing on a decade's worth of history between all three men, the match played out like a Shakespearean final act, including the greatest nearfall of all time when Taker somehow kicked out of a sweet chin music pedigree combo. The Phenom eventually scored the win to keep his streak intact, bringing to a close a spectacle befitting of the tagline, "End of an Era." Number 4, The Undertaker vs. Triple H at WrestleMania 27. For some bizarre reason, WWE went out of its way to promote the WrestleMania 27 clash between The Undertaker and Triple H as the first time these two had met at the Showcase of the Immortals. Anyone with a decent memory or access to the internet knew that they'd already faced each other at WrestleMania X7, the crash pad match, but WWE carried on regardless, and Hunter and the Deadman pulled out all the stops to make everyone forget about a decade earlier. Trips was fighting for the honor of his best bud Shawn Michaels, who had been retired at Undertaker's hands the previous year. This added some extra spice to the match, which was no DQ by the way, as these veterans damn near killed each other. After spinebusters through announce tables, multiple chair shots, and another all-time great kickout by Taker, the Phenom narrowly edged a win by trapping H in Hell's Gate. He then required assistance when leaving the ring, whilst Trips could head to the back under his own power, laying the storyline foundations for their third fight 1 year later. A truly excellent match, and certainly better than everything else on this wretched show. Number 3, Edge and Christian versus the Hardy Boys versus the Dudley Boys at WrestleMania X7. At WrestleMania 2000, a show with more ups and downs than a yo-yo factory, 3 of the Attitude Era's greatest tag teams elevated the art form to a whole new level with the first ever Triangle Ladder match. This triumvirate would meet again at SummerSlam 2000 in a similar match now called Tables, Ladders and Chairs, or TLC as it would become known, setting the stage for their final battle at Mania X7. The teams in question were, of course, Edge and Christian, whose concerto move was feared throughout the land, the Dudley Boys, the masters of the tables, and the Hardy Boys, those ladder-loving daredevils. With all 3 groups' favourite toys in play, and with the World Tag Team Championships at stake, this was going to be wild. Trying to describe this match would be like trying to describe the Mona Lisa. It just has to be seen with your own eyes to be truly appreciated. And that's the only time you'll ever hear Leonardo da Vinci compared with Edge spearing Jeff Hardy in midair. Boundary pushing, bone breaking, edge of the seat stuff, TLC 2 is one of the damnedest things you will ever see. Number 2, The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 26. It's strange to think that despite being in the same company on and off since 1990, it took until 2009 for Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker to meet at WrestleMania. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, they put on one of the best matches in the show's history. HBK then spent the next year haunted by the fact that he had come so close to ending the streak, desperate to get another shot. After costing Taker his World Heavyweight Championship, Michaels finally got his wish, but under one condition. If he lost, his career was over. Dun dun dun! 1 year on from their all-time classic, Taker and Michaels put on another match for the ages in the main event of WrestleMania 26. Not only were both participants at the top of their physical game, but the stakes here were so high that they may as well have been Rob Van Dam. After a grueling back and forth with more melodrama than an EastEnders omnibus, a defiant showstopper slapped Taker round the face, leading to the mother of all tombstone piledrivers to end the match and bring HBK's extraordinary career to an extraordinary close. Number 1, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock at WrestleMania X7. Whilst their match at Mania 19 had more history behind it, and their one at Mania 15 had the novelty of being the first, for the greatest Austin vs. Rock WrestleMania match, you have to go straight down the middle. I could tell you how these two got to the main event of WrestleMania X7, or I could just direct you towards the legendary My Way video package. That way I don't have to explain it and Fred Durst gets a few extra pennies. Everybody wins! With Rock's World Championship on the line, these two forever intertwined deities of our sport went hell for leather in front of a rabid Houston crowd, making full use of the no-holds-barred stipulation to batter each other within an inch of their lives. Then came the infamous turn when Vince McMahon assisted Austin in winning the title, leading to the Rattlesnake shaking hands with Satan himself in a moment so big it basically killed the Attitude Era. Great in-ring action, exceptional storytelling, and an ending that will be talked about for decades, Rock Austin 2 was a rematch worthy of a spot on the grandest stage of them all.